D60 Soul Path Analysis for Bob Dylan. Let us do the soul path analysis based on D60 chart of Bob Dylan now. The sun placed in the 9th house, ruling the 4th house, and aligned with the D60 deity Vishadagda, burnt by poison, shaped Bob Dylan's life around the need to transmute ancestral wounds into spiritual voice. The 9th house governs philosophy, belief systems, and the moral compass, while the 4th speaks to emotional roots and homeland. Vishadagda represents suffering that transforms, trauma refined into insight. Dylan's soul path placed him at the nexus of personal emotional inheritance and broader collective ethical awakening. His artistic output, laden with themes of loss, injustice, exile, and existential questioning, reflected this karmic tension. He internalized emotional disturbance from his inner world, 4th house, and through the moral and philosophical platforms of the 9th house, expressed them as vision. The soul's task was not just to heal from inner wounds, but to illuminate them in poetic and socially critical form, becoming a wandering preacher of burnt truth. The moon placed in the 8th house, ruling the 3rd house, and influenced by Amrita, nectar of immortality, brought a powerful current of regenerative emotional insight to Dylan's expressive and communicative faculties. The 8th house is the realm of secrets, transformations, and depth psychology. The 3rd governs self-expression, writing, and courage. Amrita offered healing, sweetness, and resilience to what could otherwise be a turbulent emotional placement. Dylan's lyrics often navigate themes of death, rebirth, and betrayal, not with despair, but with the lyrical grace of someone who has tasted the bitter and returned with beauty. His voice, grainy yet magnetic, communicated emotional honesty from the underworld. The sole directive was to harness profound emotional depth and transform it into literary elixir, soothing collective wounds through the artistry of intimate, fearless expression. Mars in the 11th house, ruling the 7th and 12th houses, and aligned with Ardra, moist, the life-giving storm, focused Dylan's soul journey on channeling emotional turbulence into collective awakening. The 11th house governs mass consciousness, social ideals, and artistic audience. The 7th and 12th govern relationships and spiritual dissolution. Ardra, the storm that brings rain, signifies intense karmic emotional surges followed by clarity. Mars here provided the fire, assertiveness, and emotional voltage needed to pierce societal illusions. His controversial stance during political moments, genre-breaking innovations, and self-imposed disappearances. 12th house, all reflect this oscillation between storm and retreat. Ardra demanded that the emotional, relational, and spiritual ruptures he experienced be externalized not as chaos, but as art that nourishes the collective. His sole mission was to ignite movements through disruption, not destruction, and to bring catharsis through bold, radical empathy. Mercury placed in the 2nd house, ruling both the 2nd and 5th houses, and influenced by the D60 deity Gora, shaped Bob Dylan's speech, values, and creative intelligence through intensity, confrontation, and uncompromising clarity. The 2nd house governs voice, language, and personal principles. The 5th house rules creativity, performance, and emotional legacy. Gora, meaning terrible or ferocious, is not destructive for its own sake. It burns falsehood and cuts through pretension. Mercury, the planet of communication, in this placement gave Dylan a piercing lyrical mind and a biting edge to his words. His lyrics often challenged power, mocked artifice, and expressed difficult truths without fear. His soul journey here was to speak with raw honesty, unsettling comfort zones with poetic ferocity. The aim wasn't to please, it was to shake, to awaken, and to offer the kind of wisdom that tastes bitter before it heals. Jupiter placed in the 2nd house, ruling the 8th and 11th houses, and governed by the D60 deity Sitala, brought a healing, cooling influence to Dylan's values, speech, and hidden emotional depths. While Mercury Gora burned, Jupiter Sitala soothed. The 2nd house became a karmic battlefield where truth had to be spoken boldly, Gora, but also offered with grace, Sitala. Jupiter ruling the 8th and 11th suggested that Dylan's philosophical and societal voice was born from inner emotional upheaval and loss. His lyrics regularly engaged with social suffering, injustice, and the disillusionment of modern life. Sitala's influence brought with it the ability to comfort others through insight, even when that insight was born of personal crisis. His sole mission was to use his voice as medicine, not by sugarcoating reality, but by offering clarity that cools and heals once it is faced. Venus in the 4th house, ruling the 1st and 6th houses, and influenced by the deity Haramba, elevated Bob Dylan's emotional identity and inner creativity into a protective, boundary-defying force. The 4th house governs the heart, emotional safety, and home. The 1st is the self, and the 6th is service, struggle, and craftsmanship. Venus here endowed him with profound aesthetic sensitivity and emotional authenticity, while Haramba, an empowering protective form of Ganesha, ensured that this beauty would be guarded and grounded. His style was distinctive yet sincere, his artistry deeply emotive yet never surrendered to vulnerability. The soul lesson was to anchor the self in creative authenticity, to guard the heart fiercely, and to let beauty emerge not as escapism, but as resilient offering. Dylan's charm, eccentric grace, and emotional poise were not masks, they were armor, forged for a life that demanded both artistic tenderness and spiritual self-defense. Saturn placed in the 6th house, ruling the 10th and 11th houses, and influenced by the D60 deity Krura, shaped Bob Dylan's work ethic, public standing, and societal impact through karmic intensity, trial by endurance, and confrontation with adversarial forces. The 6th house governs daily effort, obstacles, and refinement through hardship. The 10th rules career and public authority. The 11th governs social movements and recognition. Krura, meaning harsh or severe, represents stern karmic correction and tests of character. Dylan's journey through the corridors of fame was never linear. He met rejection, ideological backlash, and personal exhaustion. Yet Saturn Krura demanded perseverance with integrity. His public image carried the gravitas of someone shaped by resistance and solitude, never entirely at ease in the spotlight. The sole lesson here was to accept solitude as strength, to build legacy not through popularity, but through uncompromising commitment to truth, and to allow hardship to polish the voice of conscience into an enduring cultural force. Rahu, placed in the 6th house, ruling the 10th house, and also influenced by the deity Sitala, intensified Bob Dylan's karmic drive toward work, disruption, and public change, yet softened by a hidden healing mission. Rahu magnifies hunger and ambition, especially in the 6th, where it fuels the will to overcome enemies, push boundaries, and challenge unjust systems. As Lord of the 10th, Rahu colored his career with unpredictability, controversy, and restless reinvention. Yet Sitala, the cool, calming goddess, gently redirected this ambition toward a path of service through clarity and healing. Dylan's rebellious voice carried a deeper grace. His lyrics not only protested but consoled. His defiance was always tied to awakening, not destruction. His sole task was to endure the heat of public opposition and channel the friction into music that soothed the collective nervous system. His fame was not sought, it was endured, then transformed into something medicinal. Ketu, placed in the 12th house, ruling the 7th house, and likewise under Sitala's influence, infused Bob Dylan's inner life, partnerships, and spiritual direction with detachment, mysticism, and karmic resolution. The 12th house governs solitude, spiritual retreat, and the dissolution of ego. The 7th governs relationships and public reflection. Ketu here suggested a soul withdrawing from worldly attachments, disinterested in the conventional idea of fame or relationship. His solitude, both physical and spiritual, became an integral part of his creative life. Sitala cooled Ketu's sharp detachment, turning it into a quiet, healing wisdom. This placed Dylan at a spiritual distance from both his audience and his own public identity. Not out of disdain, but because his soul was tasked with transmitting truth from a place beyond social needs. His path was not to belong, but to reflect, to be the wind that cools the fever, singing from the edge of the visible world.